wanted to ask you about one thing,
Yeah.
and that was what did you learn by climbing Mount Kilimanjaro?
Um, that was an interesting experience. So I went there with my friend Tom Cole, and I've known him since I was 18. He started working in Africa. I mean, his father actually took the family back and forth. He was an art historian and specialized in African art, and so. And Tom works in agriculture, so mostly food security. So these days he does a lot of consulting for like the UN for refugee camps. So for the gardens that like one of his big thing currently was Sudanese refugees, and they're given land to farm, and he's actually developed a permaculture system that's finally starting to be more regularly implemented, and it's apparently like the most successful food program they've had, because it's like how to do intensive like multi-layered farming in very small areas, how to be aware of drainage instead of kind of ignore everything, and also ways of talking to these displaced people that ask them to observe and come up with solutions instead of telling them how it's done and throwing a bag of seed of something they don't eat at them. Oh, you eat sorghum? Here's wheat. Enjoy. And so
We're helping.
we're helping. Really, somebody gave us all this stuff. And so he's like, how do you speak to people with, he's an amazing guy. And his brother was actually one of the first people who brought up the concept of ecological justice, and how those who are most disenfranchised tend to be the canary in the coal mine when it comes to ecological destruction. And his brother died in a car crash in Uganda, and he'd planned ever since he was like 18, and he was at school in Kenya, and there was one day where the clouds cleared and he actually could see Kilimanjaro all the way from like Nairobi, and he's like, I'm gonna climb that with my brother. And so when he turned 50, his wife was like, you're gonna do it this year, you're never gonna do it. And so we had this group of 8 friends, and I would say the most incredible thing was just seeing his face at the summit, and him thinking of his brother and having this community of men around him who went halfway across the world to do this walk with him. And I think it's my favorite thing is seeing, like, honestly, I think increasingly, and I've, could talk about a bunch of things, but kind of outside of like my concert world, I love places where people are free to weep openly and cry and not apologize for it.
Right.
And I could tell you about grief ceremonies, all these other things, but just seeing him at the top of that mountain, let go completely and, fulfill this pact he had with his brother, this promise he'd made to himself, his lifelong tie to Africa. And, the guys, as we were walking up, they were like, there's a white dude who speaks Swahili. Like, what's up? They never had a group like ours. They were, it was a lot of fun. And,
but that was the shared experience for him. But yeah, I mean,
shared experience. So that was the community part. For me, it was the final ascent was a beautiful experience in that you could only be in the present tense, one breath per step. And if you went up a rock that was a little, that was that high, it was in and an out breath. And if you stopped, you'd freeze. And if you went too hard, you'd boil over. And so it's like, pole, pole, they always say, slowly, slowly. It's not an athletic thing so much as it's a mental thing. And you're alone with your own thoughts. And there's times where at best you kind of stop thinking. And I actually, midway up, I just heard this voice say, let her go. about my ex-wife. Just like, you've grieved enough. It's time to be free. And I just, walked, and people were in front of me and behind me, and I just wept and breathed and took one step after another and felt something deeply unwind in my body that hadn't unwound before, about holding on to my past and my pain.
Sure.
And so for me, that was the profundity of it is, once again, there's something about the Stations of the Cross, right? There's something about doing something really hard and knowing, like, probably won't die, but, they'll carry me down if I fall over. But my choice is to give up and go back, or to put one foot in front of the other and do something hard and trust that I will come through the other side of it. And I've had some similar experiences in kind of the psychedelic world of very deep and difficult processes. This is a very different one because it's just physical. I mean, I have friends,
Right.
Who dance the Sundance, who, are held up by their chests, and, there's a variety of ways to crack people open, and most of them there's not a huge shortcut for. Like, you have to actually be willing to push yourself to some kind of edge, and then keep going, through whatever hardship it is. And so I loved that experience. I don't know if I need to climb another summit again, but
Right.
I think things that take me to my edge, and allow me to, and then also include space for that vulnerability, for that cracking open.
The Full Exposure Podcast is brought to you by Metro Health, University of Michigan Health, and Dr. Peter Hahn, in appreciation of the creative and artistic visionaries who enrich our lives through cultural connections.